Coming in at number 60 is Wipeout XL. This game originally came out on the PlayStation. Let's see, this would have been around 1996. And just kind of the same as a few games earlier that I talked about, Burnout Revenge. The reason why I love this game so much is because of its fast-paced, fun action, kart racing combat action gameplay. And this is it's so much fun. This game can get really fast, and as you start progressing further in the game. And what I love about it is a few different things. One being the setting. So just like I've talked about before with Cyberpunk, I just love this futuristic hovercraft, flying cars, and all that kind of stuff. Cyberpunk sort of setting. Second is the control of these hovercrafts. So this is the sequel, because the first one, Wipeout, it started this series, and it was a fun game for its time, but it felt a bit clunky, where as you're taking these sharp turns, and because sometimes you got to make these turns really quick. Oh my god, I'm already deceased. You would kind of grind to a halt sometimes on there, and what they improved on this one was that it still gives you a chance to sort of slide off of them in a sense, or scrape by them. See, like kind of like right there, see? Oh well, so see how it kind of like, well, okay, that's not a good example there right now, but basically it gives you a little bit more leeway there to take the turn where you're just grinding along on the rail instead of coming to a halt, and it just makes the game just much more funner, more fast-paced, and it's just so much fun, and especially as the game really starts picking up in speed. I mean, one of the biggest rushes in video games for me is when you can go through a course almost flawlessly at a pretty high speed while avoiding getting hit or taking out some of these hovercrafts with your weapons. It's exhilarating. You're almost euphoric, where you get such in a zone and all, and it's just so much fun. Many years later, and this is still my favorite racing combat game. It is just endless fun, right? Just replaying this game over and over and over, because it doesn't have a whole lot of content to it. Again, you have, you get so many tracks, not a whole lot and all, and then you can unlock like faster versions of them, and I think maybe like mirror versions of them, but nothing else other too crazy, right? But again, just like some other games that I've discussed here on this list, it's not so much about the content that it has, it's just that it does well what it set out to do. And for what this game is set out to do, it is almost flawless. I love this game so much. It is just such a blast to play through. And it's one of those games that, unfortunately, because of the licensing, Psygnosis, I don't think they exist anymore, and all the developers of this game, and that, we just haven't been able to see a re-release of it. And then you get like advertisements up to like Red Bull and all, and unfortunately those things just cost a lot of money to renew the licenses, and who wants to do that? But then I kind of wonder, I was like, well, can't you just like, I don't know, maybe change the soundtrack, or well, I wouldn't want them to do that though, because this is a banger of a soundtrack, but just get rid of the Red Bull advertising, make up your own, fictional energy drink, I guess, and advertise that. Whatever the case is, again, it's just a reality of a lot of these games getting re-released is, when they use like licensed soundtracks or cars or, certain sponsorships and whatnot. Because I really wish they would release this game again. Because the only Wipeout game that's, accessible is just the, Wipeout Omega that came out on the PS4, which was originally a PS3, and then they released it on the PS4. But other than that, none of the Wipeout games are really easily accessible anymore, which very frustrating. But yeah, I love the power-ups that you can get in this game, and the graphics are very impressive for the PlayStation. Some of the best that I've seen in this generation. I mean, they're very smooth. The draw distances, it's pretty far out, for games of this generation. And yeah, I mean, it's really impressive seeing this game when it's running at full speed. With it gets almost impossible to control, but it's hella fun trying. Still trying though. But yeah, Wipeout XL, one of the funnest games or racing games that you'll find out there. But again, really the only way to play this game nowadays would be through emulation. But if you can get it that way, definitely give it a chance. You'll have fun, and especially if you like soundtracks like, the Chemical Brothers. Like, let's see here, we got Future Sound of London, Fluke, Chemical Brothers, Prodigy. Like the song, and all. I don't want to play it too much because otherwise I might get flagged for copyright. But anyways, yeah, just a kick-ass game. Coming in at 59, it's Lightning Force. I just say Lightning Force. So for anyone that's not aware, I really don't know why, not even myself, as far as why it was spelled that way. But regardless of how they spell lightning, this game came out on the Sega Genesis originally, and was really Thunder Force 4, as it was known pretty much everywhere else. But for some reason, they named it Lightning Force, with the incorrect spelling of lightning also here in the United States. But whatever the reason, doesn't matter. This game is definitely my favorite shoot 'em up of all time. Like a 2D shooter here. And this came out during a time where this genre was at its peak, where there was just so many stuff coming out, so many games coming out. And all across the Sega Genesis, the Super Nintendo, in the arcades, and then even on the Neo Geo, and then also on the TurboGrafx 16. So what was the late 80s and the early to mid 90s, just a lot of games came out in this genre here. And for me personally, Lightning Force is the best one. And what I like about this game, outside of that it's a really good shooter, is that it kind of really emphasizes the things that I loved about the Sega Genesis. So what I love about the console war of the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis is that how different they were. With the Super Nintendo, I'm going to get more kind of adventure kind of games, or a bit more slower paced, maybe more technical games, like like Mario, Zelda, Super Metroid, things like that, right? Where on the Sega Genesis, they're just going to be more faster kind of paced games, or more intense games, I guess. Things like, obviously Sonic and Streets of Rage and Gunstar Heroes, and then of course like this game here. Not to say that one and the other couldn't do those kind of, one excelled at or not, but they had their strengths in a certain kind of game more than the other, I feel. And again, Lightning Force was just a good example, right, of what the Sega Genesis could do really well, which is these really fast-paced, very intense games. And I mean and also because of the way that the Sega Genesis' sound chip worked, it really lended itself really well to this kind of music, like the kind of heavy metal-ish, techno-ish music. And this game is just so much fun. It's very challenging though. it's very challenging game. I mean, up until like the first 4 stages or 5 stages or so, it's pretty doable. It's just that after that, I feel like the difficulty really ramps up. But excuse me. You get a cool selection of weapons that you can use, and you can alternate your speed. And then the first 4 stages, you can select them, which one you want to start off in, so you can do them in any order. And then after that, the next stages after that are, either you're on you do have to do them in the way the game presents them to you. But yeah, just such an intense game. Like I said, it's just one of those I've already had a few back-to-back games like this, right, where they're just very fast-paced, very intense, very adrenaline-inducing, and I like to get my fix on these kind of games sometimes, to get a little shot of dopamine in me, and they're just awesome. And it's just a really nice-looking game too. With the graphics, I almost felt like they could almost rival a Neo Geo game almost at times. But the version I'm playing here, it's from the Sega Ages lineup on the Switch. Has a few quality of life improvements and all, because the game had a little bit of slowdown. This one seems to has an option to fix that. But yeah, other than that though, it's just Lightning Force at its greatest. The only thing that sucks though is that it does remove a certain cheat where you can get 99 lives, and in this version removes that. So it just makes it that much more difficult. Although there is a kids mode where you can you don't lose your weapon. So like if I get killed and if I have a certain weapon, I'll lose it if it's not one of my default weapons. But the kids version removes that, which is cool, but it's, this game is still very hard. But yeah, just awesome though. Yeah, like normally right there's some slowdown, but there's an option in the Switch version to clean that up. But yeah, this is a genre that's been making a bit of a comeback in the indie scene. There's one game that I came across fairly recently, and it came out some years ago. Oops. And I didn't know it existed, but it's sort of like a spiritual successor to Lightning Force, or the Thunder Force series, and it's called Devil's Engine. And I've been playing it for a little bit, and it's pretty cool. I dig it. It's cool. It looks cool, plays cool, and all that. Not quite for me from like what this game was, but definitely something cool because I think it's made from like the same creators, or it has the same composer or something like that. But that's what caught my interest about it when I somehow came across it. But yeah, I mean, this game, so much fun. This section's pretty cool here. When you get out of the water, then the boss fight starts. And the music kicks in. Let's fucking go! The parallax scrolling in this level is just... I mean, it looks so almost like 3D. It's so well done. And when the Genesis cooked, it cooked. But yeah, anyways, Lightning Force. Kick-ass game. Coming in at number 58 is What Remains of Edith Finch. So we're coming down a bit. Had a couple of more fast-paced games here recently, but this is kind of in a completely different direction. And I'm not going to show a whole lot of this game just because, kind of like The Walking Dead Season 1, a lot of this game, it's not really much of a game. It's one of those, almost like a genre unto itself called like walking simulators, that a big part of the game is the story of it. Because there's not a whole lot of gameplay to it. You're just kind of walking around, hence the term walking simulator, and just kind of exploring things, pointing, clicking at things and all, but it's the story that kind of carries you through. And I had been hearing about this game for a while, right before I played it, and that people were really talking about it, that it was a really creative and unique game. So I was like, all right, well, I'll give it a shot. Pretty much everywhere was talking about that it's not that long of a game, and it's not. It's, I don't know, maybe 2 hours or so, give or take. But it was such a magical experience with this game and very unique that I had to place it on one of my favorite games of all time. And one of the reasons why I place it on here is, as you've already kind of seen with my, up until the point that I'm at this list here with kind of the variety of games that I have. I definitely love video games for like the gameplay of it, right? So, for example, the previous game on here was Lightning Force, and that game is more. I'm playing that because I like to play it. It's a fun game to play, to interact with, and all. Where I'm, using my motor skills and all that, right? And all to be very to have fast reflexes and all that, and so I'm playing it to have fun with it, with the game mechanics of it. But I also believe in the medium of video games because I really feel that it's a very unique format to tell a story. Because, so for example, this one, yes, there's not a whole lot of gameplay on it, but because you're still interacting with it, it has a very, if video games are put in a very unique position to be able to tell a really good story because of the extra added interactivity of everything. And with that,
I guess my grandpa didn't like history any more than my mom did.
I just think it's so clever how they do the dialogue in this here. And without giving too much away, basically, you are a member of the Finch family, and something happened to this family. And so you go over to this house to more or less try to figure out what's going on. And the story you get wrapped up in here as you find out the mysteries of a lot of different family members is just very, very unique. And the way it tells its story, how the variety of the different scenarios, it's just highly clever. And I feel like if you have any interest in, if you're a gamer and you like a good story, I would highly advise you check this game out. Or if you are trying to convince like a friend or a family member to, kind of like I was saying, right, and all that, the video games can be a very powerful medium to tell a story, and you want to give it like an example, here's another one here that you can go through them. It's not very long. Like I said, you can almost explain it to them like it's almost kind of like we're watching a movie, right? It's not very hard. It has a few little puzzles, I guess you can say, right, that might stump you a little bit, but it's not that complex. It's just let it just take you on this journey, and you'll come across a very beautiful story, and it's highly worth your time. When I started playing it, I was really enjoying it, and then there was one moment in the game that was, I'll just say, it's the way they did the way they did this section in a kind of comic book aesthetic with a very familiar song from a certain genre from a very popular movie in a certain genre. I'll just leave it at that, and I'll try to keep it vague. I was completely sold, and I was like, wow, what a clever way to tell a story. And I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to say too much about it because so much of the experience is just you getting in there and checking it out. But definitely have this one on your radar if you're interested in checking out something different than you. And coming in at number 57 is The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. This was the Zelda game that I was really wanting, and I really liked the Wind Waker. I already talked about it earlier on this list, but I still wanted that kind of more mature Zelda game. And it wasn't until later that I ended up appreciating more Nintendo's kind of more cutesy, whimsical sort of games and art styles and all that. But with the GameCube being my very first Nintendo system that I really got into the library of games, I was still kind of wanting more mature sort of games. And again, it was during that time where things were getting a little bit edgier, darker, and all that. And that's what I wanted in a Zelda game, because I wanted something that was like Ocarina of Time, just a bit more mature and a little bit darker. I mean, I didn't need it to be like a, M-rated or anything like that, but I just wanted like a darker theme. And so when this one was announced, the trailer that they showed for this one originally, where Shigeru Miyamoto comes out with his sword and shield and all, and everyone just lost it with a song that kind of reminiscent of like Conan. I mean, that was amazing, right? And I was like, yes, we're finally getting something like that. And sure enough, we did. And the end product is, it's a really good Zelda game. And I prefer this one, not by a whole lot, but I do prefer this one over the Wind Waker, just mainly because, again, I just like the style more, and it's just kind of more what I wanted in a Zelda game. And the dungeon designs and all are really excellent in this. It's a little bit more challenging than the Wind Waker also, and I will say that the graphics haven't quite held up as well as the Wind Waker, but I do like that it was going for more of a realistic look, and ultimately, it's the kind of Zelda game that I would want to see, going forward. Whatever they're doing with the next Zelda game, please bring back this more realistic look, because I like the cel-shaded look, like in the Wind Waker and the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom and all. But I just want something like this, just with today's modern graphics. But I don't know if we'll ever see that. But this is the game that gives me a bit of a glimpse of what that could be like. And so because of that, it's, fairly high on my list here. And this version here is the Wii version. Well, I'm running it through an emulator, but it's, the one on the Wii U where it has even more cleaned up textures and all. That's a good version as well to play. But again, some of the textures don't hold up as well on, some instances and all, but it's still a pretty good looking game. But the gameplay though is where it's at, and it plays very much alike like Ocarina of Time. The added wolf elements are pretty cool. They add something to the game. I wouldn't say it's groundbreaking or whatever, but it's it gives it its unique identity, I guess you can say. But traversing through Hyrule is pretty fun, but it's really at the dungeons and the boss battles or the boss fights and all where this game really excelled. And one of the things that stands out to me in this game absolutely is the final boss with you and Ganon. And I originally played this game on the Wii, and I thought it played fine enough on the Wiimote and all. I could take it or leave it, the controls, right, and all. I actually probably prefer playing it with a controller, but I will say that the final boss fight, playing it with the Wiimote and all, was pretty intense, and because it did make you feel more like as if you're actually in a sword fight with him, and just the way that whole last boss is set up. I thought it was pretty awesome, and yeah, just a lot of good memories with this game. Again, I like the darker tone of it. And I just remember having a really fun time trying to figure out a lot of these dungeons and all. And yeah, it's definitely up there with one of my favorite Zelda games of all time. And come on, would really love to have a Switch version of this at some point, or on the Switch too somehow. Midori also, I think that's her name, the little buddy that you get. She's pretty cute. I like their character a lot. Coming in at number 56 is Resident Evil 4, or Resident Evil 4. Here's a game that's probably amongst very high on a lot of people's all-time favorite game list. And I mean, this game, it was one of those very revolutionary games where, you know, it kind of changed the genre, or it added a new perspective to a certain genre. And by that I mean, with this kind of over-the-shoulder third-person perspective, it really popularized that kind of action-style games. And it's a Resident Evil game, but yes, I did say action, where this game started leaning more towards the action side of things for this series. And even so, it still was very in-your-face, still very, not so much creepy. I mean, it has grotesque monsters and all that, but it's just kind of more the intensity of like these enemies, I'll say, right, being in your face, that was what made it more, you know, anxiety inducing almost, right? That was almost more intense than like the older ones. And this game became just a bona fide classic right from the start. So this is definitely, for a lot of people, probably their favorite Resident Evil game, and really for a lot of people too, one of their favorite games of all time. Boom. Uh-oh. Yep.
Is everything okay?
There was a hostile local. I had no...
He's not a zombie. They kind of make it obvious, right, that you're not dealing with zombies this time. So it was definitely a departure for the series, but that's one thing that Resident Evil has been able to do really pretty consistently, and not just Resident Evil, but Capcom themselves, is where they've been able to take a long time running franchise and still find ways to keep it fresh. And, you know, this is one great example, because the Resident Evil formula was starting to get a little stale after this, you know, before this game came out. But yeah, this game just really gave it a shot in the arm with new mechanics, new perspective, new intensity to everything. And like I said, right, I mean, I know for many people, this did become like a favorite of all time game. I will say it's kind of weird to say this, but it is probably the most fun I have when playing a Resident Evil game. And it's just because it's really fun to play. I mean, for when it came out, the mechanics were really well done. Leon controls really well. The way you can switch between, you know, your gun, your knife, and all that. The aiming on it too also was really cool. It was a game that really also justified having a widescreen perspective as well, because it came out in 2005, originally on the GameCube, and it came out at a time where most games were still in, or I should say, we were starting to transition more towards like widescreen games, but this is one where it really gave it a purpose to that, so that way you have more of a wider view, right, of your surroundings, so you can kind of see all around of all the enemies coming at you, which was part of the intensity about it all. So I thought that was kind of cool. And on the original GameCube version, it still had the black bars on top and bottom, but they got rid of those in the later releases. And the version I'm playing here is on the Switch, which when they remastered it for the later generations, you know, we got a smooth 60 frames per second now. So on the Switch, it does kind of struggle a little bit from time to time, but for the most part, it's pretty smooth 60, at least to my eyes. But yeah, Resident Evil 4. I mean, it was a game changer for sure, and I don't quite think of it as highly as a lot of people do. And again, no shame on the game. It's just, there's just a lot of other games that I prefer over this. But I can see why this game is amongst one of the favorites for a lot of people. Like, I mean, I see this a lot, like in a lot of top tens and all. So, that's you can kind of see how important this game is to a lot of people, and also to like I said, right, to the industry as a whole. And it's definitely fun. And there's been so many different versions of this game that have come out. And I generally kind of like to stick to this one here on the Switch nowadays, just because it runs smooth, it looks great, and you have the portability factor of it. But there's like the version on the Wii that is actually pretty fun, because the way you aim the reticle there is with the Wiimote, which makes it pretty fun to play. And then there's also the remake that came out in 2023, which is pretty cool. I did like it. I'm still kind of on the fence, so if I like it more than this one. Something about this one that I felt like this one's funner to play for some reason. But maybe I'd have to go back to the other one and give it another shot. But however you play it, right, and all, like the remake is really well done as well too. So you're not gonna go wrong with it. I think it's just you just get two different flavors of this amazing game here, and yeah, I mean it was it was definitely a killer app for the GameCube, kind of late in its lifetime, but it was very short-lived though, because again, the GameCube wasn't doing too good, and it I think that this was part of the deal that they signed with Capcom, that they were going to get that Resident Evil was exclusive to the GameCube for a while. But once the GameCube was by the time this game came out, the GameCube was already kind of on its way out. The PlayStation 2 was just crazy successful. So this game came out like in January of 2005. And then within like later that year, I think in November of 2005, the PlayStation 2 port was already out. But the GameCube version did look a little bit better. So, it did have that going for it. But yeah, I mean, like I said, the game's on everything now. But just such a cool game. This part cracks me up. At 55, we have Rocket Knight Adventures. Originally came out on the Sega Genesis. And well, yeah, I mean, definitely one of the, probably my top 10, yeah, I would say probably within my top 10 favorite Sega Genesis games of all time. And it kind of came out, it was a new IP from Konami, and it definitely hung in there for me, in my opinion, with some of the other great games that Konami was doing at the time, with like your Contras and Castlevanias and so forth. Just a very fun platformer, action platformer, and very unique in concept, where you play this possum, I guess, and he, has a Rocket Knight armor where he can kind of zoom back and forth, right, with it, and so that adds to the gameplay mechanics as well too. And just a fun game to play. He controls really well. I love his animation and the way he uses, his rocket-powered armor. It's really fun. And it has some of that gameplay that I really like in a lot of 2D games and all, where it's challenging, but it's challenging because of the, the pattern, where you have to memorize enemies' attacks and all that, especially in the boss fights. And just the overall concept of the game, it kind of felt like, like a Saturday night morning cartoon, and because it's very original with its characters and all. This is still when we were getting original properties, and this game spawned a few sequels, but this is probably the one that's considered the best. And it definitely pushed the Genesis to do some pretty nifty tricks, like for example, the water effect back there. And I'm just not very good at this right now. And it was made by the team that did also the Contra Hard Corps. So a lot of the attack patterns of the way you learn attack patterns from some of the bosses and all that's kind of similar to that game as well too. So I would say, like, if you like Contra Hard Corps on the Genesis, you know this is a pretty good game too. And one fun thing about it too is just as you're seeing right here, right, you're kind of going from different kind of play styles, you know. So first you're doing like a platforming action, and now it's almost like a shooter here, and so much parallax scrolling in the background. I think that this was one of the effects that a lot of developers back then probably like to kind of flex their muscles with, and all, like, you know, look how many layers of parallax scrolling we can get in the background, which is, I mean, it is a cool effect, right? It almost makes things look 3D and all. Kind of makes you, you know, at least imagine, like, you know, what's going on in those mountains in the back there, you know, and all of them battling this kind of dragon looking thing here. But there was, but again, yeah, it spawned a few different sequels, and there was the Sparkster games that came out around the same time. A few, you know, the next year, I think, on the Genesis and also on the Super Nintendo. I played the Sparkster on this Genesis, and I don't know, it's not bad, but I didn't really care too much for it. I haven't played the Super Nintendo one really, so I can't speak for that game there. And then after that, it just, you know, there wasn't really a whole much with the series as far as I can recall. But there was a game that was done for the Xbox Live Arcade and the PSN, like an indie game almost, I think. And it wasn't too bad. It didn't get talked about a whole lot, and I don't think it really got reviewed too well. But from what I can recall, it was a decent game. But it was, you know, now it was being done with polygons now, though, so it wasn't like hand-drawn sprites. Oh. Uh-oh. But yeah, it's cool how you can use your rocket armor, so you can do it to zoom up like that. You can spin. It's kind of funny animations when you kill one of these guys here. Oh my god, I'm almost dead. But yeah, one of the more fun games on the Sega Genesis for sure. And I mean, in a lot of ways, I like this game more than a lot of Sonic games on the Sega Genesis. I don't know, I mean, I think the character's cool and all, and I don't think he has like the iconic look to lead a, you know, to be the mascot of a console, you know, and all. But it's just like this game itself, though, right? And all, it's definitely one of my more favorite Sega Genesis games. If you haven't come across it, it did recently get released on the modern consoles through, I believe, Limited Run. And yeah, I mean, it plays really well. You know, it has a lot of like the bells and whistles you like, right? In a lot of these re-releases, like Rewind, for example, there, you know, save states, you can mess around with filters and whatnot. You know, give it that CRT look, which, I don't know if I like that. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good way to play this game. Otherwise, you know, emulation, you know, that's always a way to go to also. Coming in at number 54 is Suikoden. At least I think that's how you pronounce it, Suikoden. And this game just got re-released for a lot of the modern gaming consoles, which is really cool and all, because it was a game that was pretty popular, at least amongst RPG fans, but it was stuck on 5th generation systems until recently, like I said, right when they released this HD kind of remaster of the game. Well, no, the part one and 2 did come out on the, and I think even 3 and 4 maybe did come out on the PS3 digital storefront. But as far as for modern game consoles, right, and all, it finally got a re-release here. And oh my gosh, I'm almost dead. Well, that's what I get for not paying attention. But yeah, this game here, it was the first RPG that I really got into in the 5th generation of gaming. So when the Sega Saturn, the PlayStation, and the Nintendo 64, and it was it still had, now again, this is the remastered version, and also the overworld map here is going to look a little bit different, where it has like some 3D elements of it, because otherwise in the original it was mainly like 2D. But it was the character sprites and all were still kind of reminiscent of like something you would see on the Super Nintendo, maybe a little bit more detailed, but the 3D backgrounds were in 3D, but it was sort of like a easiness into what RPGs could be until we got some of the more heavy hitters, right, that came out in that generation. But ultimately it ended up being one of my favorite RPGs from then. And mainly what I like about it is that it's a very simple game. It's the turn-based battle. There's nothing complex about it. And the story is what really hooked me on this game. And what I love about it is that it's a very well told story, but it's done in a way where it's not too super complex, because the story kind of lends itself to be something like one of those games where it has like a lot of political drama on it with all the warring kingdoms and things like that. And sometimes those stories can get a little messy with trying to remember like who's who and all that, especially because one of the main selling points of this game is that you can get up to 108 party members. So it sounds like a lot to kind of manage and keep an eye on as far as what's going on in the story, but it's done in a way where it's really almost to its benefit, kind of simplistic. And oh geez, I'm almost dead. But it just has again, because of its simplicity and all, it's easy to get into. The battle system is really to get into also, and just has an unforgettable soundtrack as well too. Oh my gosh. Okay, phew, almost died there. So it just makes the game really memorable for that. I mean, for having such a large cast of characters, you're still going to run into a lot of memorable characters, really well written ones, and it's not as complex as you might think it would be, right, to try to manage a big old party of 108 characters. And again, that's how many you can find. It's not necessarily you're going to get 108. It's just you can get up to 108. But it's cool because as the story kind of progresses along, you end up getting a headquarters where all the different party members that you get sort of have like their functions that they do in their headquarters. Some of them are just, people that you can use out in battle. Other ones, they provide certain services, like they'll get some intel for you in some of the major battles, right, on what the next move is going to be for the enemy and things like that. Because you have your traditional battles that you've been seeing here, but then you also get like where you go into these you go into war with someone, and so you have a lot of different soldiers on one side and the other. And so those are fun little diversions. It's been so long since I've played this game all the way through, but if I recall, they sort of play out like paper, rock, scissors. Like you have your squad that charges, your bow and arrow, your archers, and then like your magic users, and so one can beat the other and vice versa. I kind of forgot, which one can beat what and all, but it's fairly simplistic, but it's really fun though, and just kind of lends itself to being just a really fun game to kind of like a comfort food RPG almost, is I guess one of the way I can describe it. And as you've been kind of hearing already, right, and all, it's the music is just outstanding in this. It really keeps you hooked onto the game, and yeah, just a very fun RPG. Coming in at number 53 is Final Fantasy VIII. Oh, Final Fantasy VIII. This was a game that I had a hard time kind of getting into at first. And for a few different reasons, that's really kind of no fault of its own, at least for me, as far as why I didn't like it so much, but more so that it was a little bit too much for me at the time. And I think I had placed a certain expectation on it that it just couldn't really meet. But when I gave it a chance, it ended up being, well, my number, it landed on 53 on my all-time favorite games list. Basically what I mean is that, well, I don't want to say too much actually, just because, well, let's just say this. Final Fantasy VII was a mega hit for a lot of people, and I think that it set a certain level of quality and expectation that people probably wanted from Squaresoft coming from this series. And it was a game that was, made to kind of appeal to a lot of different people because they were really trying to popularize the RPG genre here in the United States. And it did. Final Fantasy VII was just such a huge hit, heavily marketed. Everyone loved it. And, but one thing about Final Fantasy, though, is that each game is very different. And, it's not like they follow each other. And so this one here was a pretty drastic departure for the series, which is something that we would need to start getting used to going forward. Because so many of the, again, as the series went on, all of them just had very different battle systems, stories, and all that. And it's kind of the draw of Final Fantasy, right? As you just kind of don't know what you're going to get with the next installment. And that was really put to the test to a lot of fans with this entry here. Oh, let's see. Did I get my Guardian Force? Yep, I did. Okay. And this right here, what I'm doing right here, is kind of where the game lost me when I first got it. Because the game came out in 1999. 9/9/1999. And it was, I'm pretty sure, right? It came out on the same day that the Dreamcast did. But all of this right here, I had already been playing some RPGs. So you saw like the previous RPG that I played, the Suikoden, which is kind of more of a simpler RPG. This one, with its junction system and the way you attach your Guardian Force and all that, it was very complicated to me at the time because I would have been 19 years old, but I haven't had a whole lot of experience with RPGs. And so it kind of turned me off a little bit on the game. But this game here, I got pretty far into it the first time I played it, but I was not liking it too much. And again, a lot of that was just because I wasn't quite getting it. Like, I was like, why are your characters so weak? I don't understand this whole junction thing. So I didn't really bother with it. And because of that, my attacks were very weak and all. And so I had to rely a lot on the Guardian Forces. But I was using them a lot just to try to get, try to kill some of the more basic enemies. And I got all the way up until the Lunatic Pandora, where you fight that robot, I think that comes out, either Mobile 8, I think is what his name is. And it obliterated me. And so I was like, you know what, I'm done with this game. But flash forward a little bit, I don't know, maybe like about a year or so afterwards, maybe not even that. And somehow I decided to give it another chance, and I bought a strategy guide for it. And it was a thing that I needed to really get into this game, because it kind of showed me the mechanics of it, how to do the junctioning system and all. And once I got the hang of it and I kept advancing in the game and, kept advancing, and then I eventually ended up beating it. And I ended up actually really appreciating this game. It's not quite what I wanted, but it gave me something that I really ended up enjoying that I wasn't expecting. So, so then that was kind of the magic of Final Fantasy. Yeah, it's, you just don't know what you're going to get with it, right? With the next entry. But for what it is, I do love looking at these Guardian Forces, which is this version of summon spells, and the way it kind of ties into the story and all. It's pretty cool. And some people complain about this game because of the main character Squall, but just a little personal story here. It was one of the things that kept me hooked on this game to still give it another shot, was because as much as I wasn't liking the gameplay and all that, the one thing that did kind of keep luring me back was his character, was because he, in a lot of ways, was, I really identified with him as me being a introvert, and a lot of the self dialogue that he has in his head and all, it was just something that I felt that I could really relate to, and just some of his character arc and everything was just it was just something that I really related to the character a lot. And so once I was finally able to beat it and all that, he ended up being one of my more favorite Final Fantasy protagonists. So one of the things that the game gets criticized for a lot ended up being something that I really enjoyed the game for. And I'm glad to see that it's a pretty divisive Final Fantasy game, but it's also one that a lot of people really seem to like as well too, which I'm glad to hear, because it is a good game. I do like it, and it's very unique. But Final Fantasy VIII, if for some reason you haven't checked it out, definitely give it a shot. There is some tedious gameplay elements, like for example, you have to draw magic spells from the enemy, and that can take a while, right? And also that you can rack up some spells, but the new versions that are out, like on all the modern gaming consoles, has a lot of quality of life features that you can speed things up and all that, so to maybe make it a little bit easier for you. But definitely recommend it. You're going to be treated with a very cool story that is really unique. It's a little different than a lot of your standard JRPGs, and great soundtrack as well too. Really cool CG cutscenes, and just what ends up happening at the end and all is really cool. And it has a cute little love story to it as well, and the love theme also that is played on it, that was kind of popular at the time when this game came out, that I think you can find a lot to enjoy for some reason you haven't explained or experienced this game. So if you hear that this game is kind of divisive and all, it is, and again, you may be turned off by it, but you may actually end up really liking it, so I think it's worth giving it a shot. Coming in at number 52 is Spider-Man. Originally came out on the PlayStation 4 back in 2018. This version that I'm playing here, though, is the remastered version on the PlayStation 5. But really, the main difference is on that it definitely, it cleans up the graphics and all, but otherwise it's the same game. But yeah, this game here, I'm a fan of Marvel and Spider-Man, and so this was definitely cool to be able to play a game that, kind of like the Batman Arkham games, really made you feel like Spider-Man. They got the swinging mechanic really well done in this one, and just exploring New York City in this is it's just really fun. The combat system is a lot like the Arkham games, only with some added moves, right, and all to take advantage of Spider-Man's special skill set. But other than that, it's a game where you're doing, kind of doing it's sort of like mission based, structured, and just going around the city, right, solving the overall mystery of the plot and all. But what I can say, though, is that this game, well, the story of it and all, it's actually probably one of my more favorite Spider-Man stories, as far as like what you can see on the TV, right? So whether like movie, cartoon, game, and so forth. It's just I feel like it really lends itself really well to the overall Spider-Man mythos, as far as who Peter Parker is in Spider-Man, his interactions with some of the people close to him, and his engagement with a lot of his rogues gallery. And that was a big part of the fun, because for me, Spider-Man, outside of Batman, he probably has one of the best rogues gallery in comic books. So getting to see him interact and fight with a lot of them was pretty fun. And the actor that plays Spider-Man, Yuri Lowenthal, I believe, uh, he really nails his character. And one of my more favorite portrayals of Spider-Man. Again, it's just fun listening to him just do his little quips, right? And all as Spider-Man's a bit of a smart ass as he's fighting his bad guys. But when times get serious or dramatic, he definitely makes a strong performance on those there. So yeah, this game was really fun to just be in the shoes of Spider-Man, right? It really is fun, and I love just coming up here to one of the kind of getting perched on top of this really high spot here and just overlooking the city. It's I mean the graphics in this game are pretty impressive, especially on this remastered version. But then when you want to start swinging, and what's cool is that the moment you start swinging, this music kicks in. It's like a very heroic, almost Avengers sounding music from like the movies. Um, that goes really well with the game. And the one thing that you had to get right in a Spider-Man game was the swinging, and they they really got it right in this one. I feel there was a Spider-Man game on the PlayStation 2, I believe, from the Spider-Man 2 movie, and that game was fun as far as swinging around. But this one here, just with the added technology and all, it's just a real blast to play through. I mean, just being able to like crawl or run against a building and then swing and sort of. Oh, I forgot some of the moves here and all, but just the way you can sort of traverse through the city is just a really fun, almost like you're parkouring through everything and then swinging and all. And so another fun aspect about some open world games is how you just kind of get around on the overall map, right? That you're playing in. And this one is probably one of the more funner ones, right? Because who wouldn't want to swing around a city like Spider Man? I got almost so much so that it gives me a little bit of vertigo. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I thought that was always kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, definitely, if you're a Spider Man fan, I'm sure you've already played this. But if you haven't for some reason, then absolutely, I mean, this is a very cool version of Spider Man. I really like this new suit. The I wasn't quite sure what I was going to think about it with there's the Avengers logo. And sorry, I should side note here is that there's a lot of cool little Easter eggs in this game. But I wasn't quite sure how I was going to feel about the suit with the white Spider-Man logo, but it's definitely grown on me, and it's now probably one of my more favorite Spider-Man suits. But the cool thing about this one is that you have access to like a whole bunch of suits, though. Um, I mean, everything from like the classic Spider-Man suit to kind of a noir suit. A lot of these here, I'm sure, like if you're familiar with the Spider-Man comics, this is a lot of this stuff is probably going to make more sense to you. Like this one here is from the more recent Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. And so yeah, so again, a lot of fun stuff to play around with here, right? And also, if you're a Spider-Man fan, a lot of this stuff is probably going to be really cool. Up there, another one from the MCU movies. Oh, this one's kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, so much Spider-Man goodness in this game. Jonah Jameson, of course, makes his appearance here. He does like a little podcast, which I thought was kind of clever the way they integrated him in the story. And of course, this game with Insomniac is just really, like I said with the Ratchet and Clank little mini review that I did earlier in this list, they're just really good at making the PlayStation hardware really fire on all cylinders here. Now, whichever PlayStation hardware that they're on, Like, this is on the PlayStation 5 again, right? And all with it, but this is with the Performance Pro mode on it. Also, what this means is that it runs at 60 frames per second, and there's some ray tracing in here. And, again, I don't know the full technicality of it all, but just seeing like his reflection on there, and then seeing the buildings reflected back there and all in the window there, and yet you can still see inside. It's just really impressive stuff. I mean, you can see inside the buildings there, and granted, they're not quite as detailed as like the rest of the game, but it's still really cool. I mean, definitely the illusion works there to make it look very believable. So yeah, I mean, definitely just a very nice looking game. But definitely the best Spider-Man game out there. One of the best superhero games out there as well too. And if for some reason you haven't played this one, check it out.
And coming in at number 51 is Castlevania Bloodlines. Originally came out on the Sega Genesis, and this was Sega's first actual Castlevania game. There was a game called Master of Darkness, I believe, that came out only in Europe, I want to say, for the Master System, which was very much kind of like a Castlevania clone, and a pretty good one, but it never actually really had a Castlevania game. So I was really excited when this game came out on the Sega Genesis, just because, again, I was already a huge fan of Castlevania, and felt a little left out that, the Sega Genesis never got one. And so when this game came out, I was really thrilled to see that it played really well, and it ended up being, well, yeah, actually it is my favorite Castlevania game of like this kind of more action style. Eventually Castlevania kind of went to a more kind of Metroid kind of style, right? Which, eventually turned the genre Metroidvania. But of like the more action oriented Castlevania games, this is my favorite one. And what I love about it is that it's still, it feels very snappy. I love the way it controls, which was one of the little bit of a complaints that I had with the Super Nintendo Castlevania 4, which is an excellent game. I mean, it was on my list earlier, but something about this one, though, that I just really love the way it plays more. It just feels more faster and just more responsive to me. And even though you lose the 8-way whip control, I just much prefer the level layouts of this one, the way it feels more, and in some instances the music as well too, pretty surprisingly, because again, Castlevania games just always have really great music, and this one here was really well done as well too. One of the better Genesis soundtracks. And yeah, I was just really happy that this game came out really well. And unfortunately, I think it was pretty popular for the most part, but I don't think that it, I think people still kind of, at least at this time, right, kind of think more about Castlevania being on the Nintendo systems and all, but I strongly feel like this game deserves more love than it does, because it's just such a well-made game, and kind of like Rocket Knight Adventures, before it, just a really well-done 2D platformer that plays excellent on the Sega Genesis, has some cool bosses and some cool special effects that are just a blast to memorize how to beat some of these stages and these bosses, and really colorful graphics. But yeah, kind of going back to it though, what really stands out for me in this game is just all the variety in the stages. As because in a lot of these stages you fight several different bosses, and just what you do in the stages varies up quite a bit, which that's been kind of a staple of Castlevania games, but I feel like in this one more so than a lot of the other ones, and which is one of the reasons why I place this Castlevania game as one of my more favorite ones. Oh, oops. Yeah. And it was kind of unique too, where you don't play a Belmont in this one, you play two characters, and that was one of the other things too also that I thought was kind of cool, because it gives us some replayability value, is that
I mean, for the most part, you're going through the same stages and all, but the two different characters that you pick on this, so there's John Morris and Eric, I think, is the other guy's name. And John Morris just kind of plays more like your standard Castlevania protagonist, right, with the whip and all. And then Eric, he has a spear that gives him a little bit of a different feel, and he has a few different moves where like John can swing with his whip, and Eric can do like a high jump. And so because of that, in certain stages you access certain different parts that that the other can't access. So again, gives it a little bit of replayability value. But see, like there's what John can do. Oh, I didn't really time it right. Oh, okay, I'm doing horrible. But yeah, again, gives it a little bit of replayability value there. And what I like about it too also is like it's a little gory, right? A little more so than your regular Castlevania games, which I thought was pretty cool. Yeah, this game has excellent music. Yeah, I mean, it's just, again, the blast processing, for me, I swear by it. It's just something about this game that just feels very responsive, very fast. And I know it's kind of weird to say, when I'm talking about like a Castlevania game, but it makes the platforming just feel very, very fun to play, very precise. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a Sega fanboy still. Those were the days, though, huh? Because you always had something to compare it to, right? Like, you had Super Castlevania 4, and you had Castlevania Bloodlines. Like which one is better? Because they were two different games, and it was cool to kind of debate over that back in the day. But yeah, if you haven't played this game for some reason, it's out on the there's a Castlevania collection that came out a few years ago. It's on there, so it's there's definitely a way to play it on modern systems here, and give it a shot. Like I said, if you're more familiar with the other Castlevania games but haven't played this one, yeah, I think you'll be surprised by how much you can really like this game. Coming in at number 50 is Faxanadu. Faxanadu, however you pronounce it. Faxanadu. However you pronounce it. Here's a Nintendo game that I really, really enjoyed. And it's definitely one of my more favorite on the system. And the game that I feel gets overlooked a lot. And I really wish they would bring it out, at least on the Nintendo Switch online services. Because I feel like it's kind of gotten lost in time now and all. But it's, for me personally, one of the better adventure games on the Nintendo that still hold up. Because some games don't quite hold up, I think, from that system. Like, for example, like, Nintendo's own Metroid and all. But this one, I think, is still very fun to play. It's, has a bit of, like, Lord of the Rings style fantasy and all to it. And it plays pretty well, where the platforming is pretty well done. And has a lot of cool play mechanics and all, like just the regular sword play and all on it is pretty fun, and just also like a lot of the different weapons you can collect and all is pretty fun as well too. And you're just kind of going down a really magical adventure, trying to go up this tree of elves or dwarves. Oh, I need a ring. And just makes it for just one of the better medieval action games or action adventure games out there on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Also one of the better soundtracks too, I believe, in this system as well. Has a bit of a Metroidvania where again you go back and explore an area after you've got a new weapon. There's the ring. I remember playing this game at a friend's house for a while, and we would get stuck in this one part that had like a this fog, and the song that plays in there is still ingrained in my memory just because of how much time we spent there. But really good soundtrack though, like I said, to this game. Or a nice little remake of this game too also would be pretty cool, like updated graphics and all that. I think it's based on a series of game in Japan. I'm not quite sure. Xanadu, I think, and so hence the name Fox Xanadu, because I think I heard that the FA part of the name comes from Famicom, you know, the name of the Nintendo in Japan, and then Xanadu, the name of the game series over there in Japan. So maybe it is Fox Xanadu, but I'm gonna call it Fox Xanadu. They blink really fast. I beat this game fairly recently again, you know, just to kind of get a taste. Like, I was like, okay, does this game still hold up? And it does. It's fairly challenging, but it's still the challenging that feels doable still, though. So there's a lot of different shops here. Like, for example, this guy will teach you, let's see. Oh, oops. I shall give magic for 200 gold. Sure. Okay, so he kind of fills up my magic a little bit. But I want to go buy some weapons. Of course, if I don't get killed here by these things. Because my life is pretty low. Oh my god, there I go. I'm deceased. And one thing that this game was known for also is the crazy long passwords. Or your mantra. But yeah, just it's a good adventure. It's, you know, if you can still get past the old school graphics and all, I think you'll have fun with this game. It's one that still holds up from this generation. Coming in at number 49 is Outrun, the arcade classic. The version I'm playing here is one from the Sega Ages lineup on the Nintendo Switch, but which is pretty much the arcade. It's pretty much arcade perfect as far as I can tell, right? And Outrun is just a game that it's fun. I mean, I always have a blast coming back to this game and playing it. But it is rooted in a lot of nostalgia for me. I'm a Sega kid, and I think one of the things that lured my older brother and my dad to get the Sega Master System originally, which led us to the Sega Genesis and so forth, was part of it, I think, was Outrun. Because the game was, you know, it was already out in the arcade, and I think my brother just was really raving about this game. And also, somehow, like I said, right, they ended up getting the Sega Master System, I think, for this game. And the Sega Master System port of this game, obviously, it wasn't anywhere close to the arcade, but it was just really a fun experience to play it still. And so it's what I had to play back then. And so got so hooked on that version there that we would play it over and over and over. My dad would really get into it a lot as well, too. And he still thinks it's like the greatest racing game of all time. Not this version or the arcade version, but the Sega Master System version, which I think is funny. But it's just so fun. The variety of the stages, the music, the Sega arcade games just give you joy. You know, they're just so much fun to play. And that's kind of where Sega really excelled at first and made a name for themselves, you know, because there was a Sega that existed before Sonic. And I wish people would realize that more, because so much of what gets released now for Sega now it has to do with Sonic content. And again, Sonic is cool. Sonic is great. I'm glad he's a popular character and all that. But there's so much more to Sega than just Sonic. And this was one of the more flagship Sega games back in the day. And it was just, you know, just the concept of it, right? It's so fun, and it's arcade gaming at its finest. And I want to say, was this a rumor or not? But I think I saw something that Michael Bay is directing an Outrun movie, with Sydney, what's her name, Sydney Sweeney, to play in it as well too. It's interesting concept. I guess we'll see what they can do with it. I mean, I guess you can make a fun movie out of it if they keep it, lighthearted, and and all doesn't take itself too seriously and just make kind of a fun movie. Sure, I guess I can see how they can maybe pull something like that off. So it's kind of cool that Sega's making a little bit of a comeback in that, in a sense. But yeah, I mean, one of the things that was just so fun playing this game is because, as you can be kind of seeing, right, at the end of each stage, it branches out to where you can choose, one of two stages, and depending on the route you take, right, you'll just see a bunch of different stages, and it keeps the variety up as there's, multiple different outcomes on how you can reach the final line, because there's 5 different final stages on there. And when you reach the final one, each one of them has a unique ending to him, with they're kind of fun to watch. But yeah, the music is classic on this. This is my nostalgia right here. I know for a lot of people it was Super Mario Brothers and all that, and that's awesome. Like I said, I love those games. But this was my nostalgia here. When I think back of when I was a kid, what I was playing as a kid, it's this right here. And it's funny because I love Sega arcade games. I think they're fun and all, but they're not necessarily like my favorite kind of games, right? And like I said, I tend to lean more towards RPGs and all that. But just seeing this and this kind of stuff in the arcades and all, with these were called like super scalar games or something like that. And because it was this one, Hang On, Space Harrier, Afterburner, those games right there, they were really impressive to see them in the arcades at the time. And it just kind of seemed like Sega had the best technology when it came to arcades. If you want to see the best graphics, Sega's where it's at. And that was the case back then. I mean, this was, what I can recall, no other racing game looked as good as this when it came out. And this is the last stage, right? Yeah, last stage. Oh, oops. That's kind of funny if you flip where you both fall out of the car. And the arcade cabinet was pretty cool too, because there was the stand-up arcade cabinet, and there was one where you could sit down on it and all. And if I remember right, they both rumbled and all, and the wheel rumbled. So give you a pretty cool sensation of making it feel like you were actually in a car as it reacted to your, what was going on screen. So it was basically like the haptics feedback and DualSense from back in the day. Only, we could only have it in a very expensive arcade cabinet. Oh, and do I get enough time still? Yeah, I should be able to beat it still. Up there it is. Congratulations. And my car broke down. He's like, what? Made it to the finish line, right? But yeah, it's just fun going through all the different stages, whether you're on A, B, C, D, or E, and seeing what the different endings are and how each stage looks like and all. So just a fun game. I always love coming back to this game from time to time, and it's one of my comfort food, highly nostalgic games and all, and I just can't help it that I had to place it fairly high on my list. I just love coming back to this game so much.
Coming in at number 48 is God of War. This one is not to be mistaken with the God of War game that came out originally on the PlayStation 2 back in 2005. This is the reboot that the series did in 2018, again, that started on the PS4. The version that I'm playing here is through the backwards compatible on the PS5, which gives it the benefit of running at 60 frames per second. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to think about this series going in this direction, and I say that even from someone that really liked the old, more hack and slash God of War games, and I was getting a little tired of them, but I really like that style though, so I wasn't quite sure what Santa Monica was doing with this version here, but I couldn't deny though that the game definitely looked just really beautiful, and so it was interesting to see what it was going to be all about, because they were going in a completely new direction where now it's more in Norse mythology. And once the game came out and it was getting a lot of great reviews, I got it, checked it out, and yeah, this game is pretty special. It's definitely amongst one of the PlayStation's best, and a really solid title to the stellar exclusive lineup that the PlayStation 4 had. And ultimately, what this game is, it's a kind of like a third person action adventure game with some RPG elements to it. And it's got a really cool world to explore here, again, set in the Norse mythology. And ultimately, Kratos is far away now from his adventures in Greece that he had in the previous game. So he's kind of got a whole new life here and all, as you can see with his son there. And just the journey that they take in this game is makes for just a really engaging and dramatic adventure that is really brought to life a lot by the performances of the characters, the gameplay where now you have an axe as your main starting weapon. And again, with the different change of perspective and all, it's still, I guess you can say, hack and slash gameplay, but there's just so much more to it now, where there's a lot of more exploration, customization of your character, and the way just uh, different ways of solving puzzles now and all of that is really rewarding in this package here, where again it ties it all together with a really engaging story. And just the way it starts out leaves you with a lot of questions like, okay, what is going on here? Why are we here? What happened to Kratos, during all this time, from when he was, from what we know of his previous games and all. And so getting to unravel everything and all is just really, really fun to go through. T.C. Carson, who originally voiced Kratos in the original God of War games. I mean, he was excellent for that version there. But now we have Christopher Judge that does the voice for Kratos, and his performance lends a bit more, what's the word I want to use, gravitas, or more of a slower, more matured voice, right? Where you could just tell he's been through some stuff, and he really nails that aspect of this new version of the character.
And as you can see, the presentation in this game and the production values is just really off the charts. Santa Monica Studios is one of the best in the business. I mean, they really excelled with their older God of War games, and now with this more powerful hardware, I mean, this game is definitely one of the best looking games of all time. And then you get that with the amazing soundtrack from, I believe his name is Bear McCreary, I think. And I want to say, was he the guy behind? He's behind one of the TV shows. Was it The Walking Dead, or he's behind a pretty popular TV show? And but what he does with the soundtrack in this is really something special. And so part of the engaging part of going through this game is, again, it's like I said before, right? What are we, what is happening here, and all, and so I mean, just the way it starts out, you would almost think that you're at somewhere at least in the midpoint of a game or so, but nope, this is the very start. And from what happens from here on out, the adventure you go on is not always as bombastic as, say, a lot of the older God of War games, although there are definitely some very high scale, epic moments, right? From like, similar to the old one. But you do get a lot more dramatic story beats, a lot more of a personal story that you can really relate to Kratos a bit, more in this one. Where in the previous one, he was just kind of more of a vessel to take out your anger, right, against monsters and the Greek gods and all that. Where this one just kind of feels a little bit more like, okay, I'm relating to Kratos a lot more. Here he is as a father with his kid, and their relationship and all that. As the story goes along, as part of the special part of this game here. And one thing that, if you haven't noticed already since I started the game, is that what I think was really amazing what they did with this game, with the director being Cory Balrog, who did the second God of War game on the PlayStation 2, is that everything is shot or in one shot. So there's no like cuts, right, where it goes to a different scene and all. Everything just continuously flowing. How they did that is definitely something special, and it's really makes it for a very visceral, in your face, and really engaging experience. But yeah, God of War, if you haven't for some reason played this, check it out. One of the best on the PlayStation. Coming in at number 47 is Ninja Gaiden Sigma. So there's a few different versions of this game, and I'm going to go with the Sigma version. But basically, what I'm really referring to, right, and all, is what originally came out on the Xbox back in 2004. This version here I just like because I just like some of the quality of life improvements that it has. Like, for example, the way you can cycle through your life down there with the directional pad, and just has some other things too also that I can appreciate, just because this game is hard. But I know that there's from what I heard, there's some gameplay differences between like this one and the Ninja Gaiden Black that, you know, on the Xbox and all. But like I said, I just like this one and all because of some of the quality of life improvements. But whichever version you go, right, and all. But basically, this Ninja Gaiden game here, right, and it's I mean, it is just such a kick-ass action game where the controls are very reactive and you really have to be on your toes to, you know, to be able to get through this game because it is tough. I mean, it's not gonna be kind to you, but it's one of those games though where, you know, if you are killed and all, or if it feels like you messed up and all, right, and because you have to be at the top of your game on this one. But the way Ryo controls, he's so much fun to control. And when you pull off some of these combos and, you know, or clear a room, it is just one of the biggest highs that I have felt in video games. Just because, again, nothing is too super flashy, but some games make like the attacks flashy because of like the animations, the special effects and all that. This game is more because of how, you know, how quickly you are to be able to, you know, like if you master the controls and all, it's going to look cool because of your skill, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And every encounter, I mean, you have to be on your toes, otherwise these enemies can waste you really quick. So it's not a game for the faint of heart. I mean, this game will kick your butt. And one of my best, I guess my proudest achievements in gaming is, because I'm a decent gamer, you know, and I feel like I'm decent at video games and all, but I'm by no means like, you know, professional or anything like that, especially nowadays. But probably one of my best achievements that I've had playing video games was beating the 2004 version of Ninja Gaiden, you know, from, you know, start to finish. Yeah, it took me a little bit, but I was able to beat that game because it was challenging. But I do like this one again and all because it can, you know, it has some options to lower the difficulty if need be and all. Because again, I'm an old man and I just, you know, sometimes playing a game that's this hard can be a little bit much. But I just the control that you have of this character and the person, you know. So I think what I said about Virtua Fighter 5 about just how precise the controls are, how, you know, it really feels like if you do good, it's because of your skill and all, and how responsive the controls are, you know, when you press a button and the action on screen. All of that, what I said about Virtua Fighter, is you can kind of say the same thing about this one, and as to why I like this game so much. It just feels right when you control it. Oh, and then when you pull something off like that, right, it's just so cool. And it's a fairly long game, and what I like about it too is that it's not just like a straight action game. It has a bit of elements of like a Metroidvania, which I thought was really cool. So there's definitely some meat on the bones, right, so to speak, right on this action game. Oops. Oh, right, I gotta get something. And it's pretty gory, and as you can see, all the blood splattered over there. But for a while, when this one came out on the Xbox, it was, I mean, it was a very impressive looking game. This one, the Sigma version, you know, the graphics are a little bit better. But what was done on the Xbox originally, and then the Ninja Gaiden Black, it was, I mean, the game looked almost like a 7th generation game, because when Ninja Gaiden 2 came out, and that's a fine looking game as well too, you know, not too much of a difference, right, as far as like the quality of graphics from what the Xbox was doing. So, I mean, Tecmo was, they were on fire when it came to like their graphics. I love how you can switch in real time, you know, with between like your projectiles and your melee attacks. Just kind of love how you can mix things up, right? Now you can jump, shoot some shurikens, and then as you get more combo, see, like stuff like that. That's just so wickedly cool. But yeah, Ninja Gaiden, if you haven't played this game for some reason, it's definitely worth a shot if you like really hard action games. And even if you're steering away from it because of the challenge, still give it a shot. Like I said, this version has some options to make it a little bit more easy if you want to go that route. But it's a kind of challenge that, if you keep putting some time into it and all, you will get better. And so I think it's worth it for that. I'm actually kind of excited because Ninja Gaiden Ragebound comes out tomorrow, I believe, and it's been getting really good reviews. So that's more of a 2D version. That's a 2D Ninja Gaiden game, but I'm excited to play through that. And then later on, Ninja Gaiden 4, and then also Ninja Gaiden 2 Black that came out earlier this year. So there's a lot of good Ninja Gaiden stuff coming out coming out this year. So yeah, it's good time to get into the series if you haven't already. Coming in at number 46 is Gunstar Heroes. And another game that showcases what I think the Sega Genesis was so good at was just making these fast-paced, kick-ass action games. And this is definitely one of the best ones. I would say probably one of my favorite running gun shooters. It's just so much fun. This game is just there's just so much going on screen and all that. It is just it keeps you on your toes. It's the right kind of challenge, and luckily it's not just like a one-hit kill like a lot of running gun games are, which I don't know, maybe you might prefer that, but I kind of like it that you have like a life bar, almost like an RPG kind of a life bar. And it's just a super odd little game where you're fighting, like, for example, what is this, an asparagus? I don't know what that is that I'm fighting there, but it is just so cool. And it was a game that where the world was introduced to a little company called Treasure, because they were made out of like employees from Konami, I believe, and they ventured out and created this company here. And I don't know which game came out first, this or this Ronald McDonald game on the Genesis, which is actually pretty decent. So as odd as that sounds, but this game here was like the game that really put them on the map, and it is just so much chaotic goodness in this game that it's just a fun game. I don't know how else to say it. And again, it played to the Genesis' strengths: fast, fun, colorful, cool, kick-ass music. It's cool effects too as well. And you're never bored with this game. There's just always something going on, and that's what I love about it. The stages don't overstay their welcome, which is one thing you've heard me say probably a few times for a lot of these like more retro video games. And I say that because it's one of the things that I feel like a lot of more modern games sort of lack, where sometimes the levels just sort of drag out a bit and all. And it's like, things don't have to be like super long or whatever. Just give me just really well constructed stages that have a really fun obstacles on them. They know when to stop and all, but still in the segments of time that you're playing them, that it's really, that it's challenging enough, and and you will hook people. And that's why I think a lot of people like to go back to retro games. It's just because of the easiness of like the more pick up and play nature about them. And like this game here, it's just so much fun to get through. It's very anime-like and all, and Treasure just has a certain style to their games, and this is the first game that I was introduced to them, but eventually as I started playing more of their games later on, it's like, okay, yeah, this is a Treasure game, but this is probably one of their more popular ones, and I'm glad because when this game came out, so I was a big fan of Game Fan magazine, and they were just raving about this game, like it's like the best thing ever and all that, but some of the other gaming magazines, they kind of talked about it, and some of them liked it and all that, right, and all, but none of them really seemed to praise this game that much, though. But again, Game Fan magazine just loved it, and so I was all over it, and I personally loved it as well, too. And so it's kind of cool to hear now that a lot of people have talked really highly of this game as well, because it's just so it's just very creative and very cool and very fun and challenging too. It has some personality to it and all with the characters. Doesn't have like a complex story or anything like that, but again, it doesn't need it. But I do still like that though. Even if you're not going to give them like a complex story or anything, I still like to, see some creativeness in the character designs and all that. Like, I don't know who these characters are, but I get a little bit of an idea where it seems like they're like a little family of, I don't know, like thieves or whatever, right? And all, and it just gives the game a lot of personality, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, so basically, what I like about it is that you can select from 4 different weapons, and then you can mix and match the weapons so that they give you very unique. The way it changes your weapon, right, is pretty unique. And then the first 4 stages, you can select which one you want as well too. And then after that, the later stages, you have to play them in order. Yeah, I mean, if you just want like a fast, cool action game, this is probably one of the better ones, and definitely one of the crowning jewels on the Sega Genesis. Coming in at number 45 is Shadow of the Colossus. This game originally came out on the PlayStation 2 back in 2005. The version I'm playing here, though, is the PS4 remaster version of this game, which came out on the PlayStation 4. And this would have been around, I don't know the exact year, but I want to say maybe 2019 or 18 or so, within that time frame there. I don't quite recall, but this one was done by Bluepoint, though, for the remake. So Shadow of the Colossus is one of the most magical experiences in a video game that you can have, in terms of something that is very expressive and artistic without being very in your face about it, as far as like the storytelling and all that, because a lot of it is just kind of left to your imagination, because it tells a story in a very subtle style, where you're not given you're just given some exposition at first, and then after that you just go at it. And the premise of the game is basically you're in this mystical land, and you're traveling with a woman who seems to be unconscious, or you don't know what's going on with her. She's sleeping, is she dead? And you get some information that there are some colossuses on this land, and if you slay them all, then you have a chance of saving your beloved. That's more or less the setup of the game, right? And all that's all kind of explained in the initial exposition of the game. And so what you have is just your sword that guides you through with a light to find these colossus. So there's nothing really much to do in between these on this land. You're really there's no bad guys. You're not engaging in combat with with enemies. It's just you're just really tracking down these huge monsters, and with that, so a big part of the game is what is your interaction with these big old colossus, and well, you'll see here in a bit, but part of the fun comes in trying to find them at first, as again you have your sword that points you in the direction of where the next colossus that you need to go after is at, but it's just kind of pointing you in the direction, and sometimes to get there you have to do a little bit of platforming, and or maybe solve kind of like a little bit of a puzzle to get there, but then once you get there, well, you'll see.
the scale of some of these colossus is just very breathtaking and very intimidating as they just sort of slowly wander about, right? And you're just left in awe as you're approaching them and thinking. So, but a big part of the fun of the game is like, okay, I have to take this down. How in the heck do I do that? Well, you have a few tools here. One of them being, oh, okay, I'm a little confused with the controls here. I think I'm more used to the PlayStation 2 version because they kind of changed the controls a bit. Okay, here we go. So you have your light there that's going to kind of show you where their weak spots is at. So like, see, it's narrowing down on somewhere on his leg there and at the top of his head. So then it's like, okay, well, how do I go about this? So there's his first weak point. And so you have your grip meter there, which you have to keep track of. And there's the, like, for example, you hold the R2 button to make you hang on to him, as otherwise you can fall. Now you're on your way to the next weak point. And usually they'll start moving around, so you got to hold on to the button so you don't get shaken off and keep track of your stamina meter there at the bottom right. Now I already know what to do in this game and how to beat the bosses and all that. So, but part of the fun originally when you first play it is just trying to figure it out because each one is basically like a puzzle. How do I get up there? How do I find the weak spots? And how do I attack them? And so, I guess the one downside that I will say about this game is that the replayability value isn't too high. Just because again, once you know how to beat it, there's not much more to the game. But your first playthrough, though, it is very, I mean, as you're seeing here, right? It's just a very unique world that they created here. And the concept of the story, I find just very fascinating as it kind of shows, what someone would do for their beloved. And so every time you beat a Colossus, you're brought back here. And then there's a lot of mystery, right? Like I said, the game doesn't spell out everything for you. You're just kind of engaging in it a lot with just the visuals and all. But because of its uniqueness, because of its just the experience you have while going through this game and the emotions you feel as everything plays out and you come to the final, the finale of the game and how it all resolves itself, it's just truly a game that is just on another level as far as creativity, originality, and these developers here, they just know how to construct a certain world with and engaging you in it with its visuals and the music to it too, also, which is really amazing. And you're just sort of brought into this world and are just swept away by its sort of very almost ominous mystery about it all. one of the most unique games that ever came out under the PlayStation brand. And this version, again, right, the remake on the PlayStation 4 is really well done. The graphics are just a lot better, right, and all, and it runs at a really smooth frame rate where the PlayStation 2 one kind of struggled. It does lose a little bit of its atmosphere, I feel, because the one on the PlayStation 2 had a certain look about it, which unfortunately sometimes that happens right when they're remaking a game. But this is still the one that I would recommend to get. The controls are improved, and again, it just runs a lot smoother and all. And so you can really get a better sense of just the overall scope that they were trying to do with this game and all, and just all its beautiful glory. So yeah, Shadow of the Colossus, one of the most amazing experiences you can have in a video game. And coming in now at number 44 is Journey. This game originally came out on the PlayStation 3 from a company called That Game Company, and it was an indie game, and eventually you're able to play it on the PlayStation 4 and backwards compatible on the PlayStation 5, which does up the I don't know about the resolution, but the frame rate and all to 60 frames per second. And eventually did come out on the Steam as well too. So when this game came out, I wasn't really getting into indie games too much. I think I always just had an impression about them that they were just lesser games and all, which was very naive of me. But I kept hearing a lot of good things about this game here. And so one day I was like, I'm going to give it a shot. And this was back on the PlayStation 3 where it first originally came out on. And what happened in this game, it really, some games just sort of leave such an impact on you and all in the time that you spend with them that just makes you take a step back and say, that was very amazing. And that was something that I really feel that I only could have experienced in a video game because of the style of video games where you interact with them, right, with your controller, and and then you're getting sights and sounds and all that as well too. And this is another game that I would recommend to anybody that is perhaps not too much into video games, but maybe you want to get them into video games, as it is just truly a magical experience. And this is a game that's going to be a little bit harder for me to talk about, so I'm probably not going to go on too long about this because it is a short game, and so I don't want to, show too much about it. But all I can say is that the journey, as the title, as the name of the game is says, that you go on in this game really leaves you in awe of just what happens. So you saw the little intro there, and you're controlling this character, which he's kind of in a robe here, in this very barren land. You start off in this desert here, and like I said, right, it's not that long of a game. You can probably beat it in roughly about 2 hours or so, and it's almost like one of those walking simulators, but the overall package and presentation here that you have with the visuals, the music, and there's a certain, I don't, like I said, I don't want to I don't want to say too much on it, and not because part of the experience is just that you're going through it, right, and then what ends up happening in it. But I'll just say that there was something that happened at the very end that I was grinning like almost ear to ear and was blown away by what they did with this game. That was a huge twist, and I don't want to say no more. Like it's just it was something that left me with goosebumps afterwards, and it just made me kind of like almost like say like that was really creative, that was really imaginative, that was quite the journey that I just took with this. And thank you to the developers, which I believe they're called that Game Company. Yeah, it's just
I mean, it was so much so that like again, even if it's a short game and all that, and really light like on the playability part of it, some games it's just the experience and it still takes you on and all that, make it just worthwhile of being one of the greatest games of all time, at least in my opinion here. Coming in, guns blazing at number 43 is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. So this is the Modern Warfare 2 that came out in 2009. So not the more modern one, which came out, I think, like, just a few years ago. So I am not a big Call of Duty fan as far as like online gaming. I've said before, right, and I'm just not much of an online gamer. But for a lot of these older Call of Duty games, I was a big fan of their campaigns, just because I think they're just very fast, action, a lot of chaoticness going on, a lot of cool set pieces. And at the time, if you wanted to see like some of the coolest, gameplay experiences and moments in video games, it was the Call of Duty games, right, and all that would have a lot of cool action to them. And I just love playing through the campaigns of them for that, for those reasons there. And this is the one for me that's my favorite one. It's just these games can get so chaotic, and they're just a lot of fun. Oh, and apparently I'm not that good at it. But yeah, I mean, this game is it's just, I mean, it really gives you a sense, right, and all, like, just of how should I say it, just how, well, I have no idea what it is to be in a situation like this, so I don't want to speak to, like if I know what I'm talking about and all, but it's just, it's just very chaotic and all, and it brings a sense to, just how crazy, like, being in a scenario like this could get, as far as if you're just in a virtual way, obviously, right, and all. Like I said, I don't really want to talk about what I don't know what I'm talking about, but it's definitely, they do make it in a way, though, where it's very fun, because the controls, one thing that, so like Halo perfected controls on console with being able to use the dual analog stick, but okay, I see what I need to be doing. Oh my god. I'm so bad at this game, but Halo really perfected the console control scheme, but Infinity Ward and, well, all the developers of like the Call of Duty games, they made things and all where they streamlined it even further. So, for example, the way you can aim down your sights and just the fluidity of the gunplay and all that is just really well done, and they made it much more user friendly. So that anybody can just kind of get in there and all. Then at that point, it just depends on your overall fast reflex skills and and all that. That's going to determine, right, and all, how good you can play on this game, which really lends itself to the multiplayer, I would assume. But again, whenever I've tried to get into multiplayer on this game, I've tried before in the past, and it's like I'm just not good enough at these kind of games for that. But yeah, definitely like the single-player campaigns of these games. They're just so much fun. A lot of cool set pieces, a lot of cool moments. And this one I picked in particular just because it has some really amazing stages on what happens in the story and all that just had my jaw drop on the floor, where I was like, holy crap, that is amazing. Just some of the coolest things I've ever seen in a video game. That even gives me goosebumps to this day. And has probably, even to this day, for me personally, a scene that I feel is just like highly controversial And I mean, like I said, I'm someone that I can, I'm not offended by a lot of things and all. If it's fiction, it's fiction, right? I understand that. But even when I was playing a certain scene, which I'm not going to say what it is here and all, but I'm sure if you played this game, I did feel a little uncomfortable playing through it, where I'm like, oh, should we be doing this? And but it kind of gave a sense, though, right, of like, the high stakes, I guess, of the overall conflict that you're involved in this game here. Boom. That's so cool how the fence kind of rocks back and forth there and all, and the controller rumbles. Yeah, I mean, if you want to like high spectacles and just a lot of crazy action and all that, it was always the Call of Duty games, right, to go to for that. They're just so much fun, so much. It's almost like watching a Michael Bay movie on crack. And so the Call of Duty games, I mean, they were coming out pretty much yearly up until from like, I would say, 2004-ish or so and going forward. And then they ended up creating like their own little sub franchises. So like, for example, there's Call of Duty Modern Warfare and then Call of Duty Black Ops. But for me personally, out of the ones that I've played, the Call of Duty Modern Warfare trilogy on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 also, that was my favorite one. I thought that the overall story arc of those three games and all was really cool. But for me, this one is the one that just kind of stands out, just because, again, of the story elements that happen in this game and all. I just thought was just crazy of what ends up happening here, and kind of almost gives it a sense of like real world conflicts. And I think that's kind of what made it more almost personal, almost creepier, right? And not because stuff like this could happen, I guess. But yeah, I mean, Call of Duty, about Call of Duty. There's not probably a whole lot more I need to say about this game. It's one of the most popular franchises of all time. But so I guess I would ask, what is your favorite Call of Duty game? And for the campaign, I mean, definitely chime in if you have a specific Call of Duty game that you like because of the multiplayer. But I'm kind of curious. So what is your favorite Call of Duty franchise? I'm interested in hearing what most people think on, some of these campaigns on some of these games. Coming in at number 42 is Streets of Rage 4. I really, really wanted to add Streets of Rage 2 in this spot, or just overall in the overall list, and it probably would make it normally. But I don't have like very hard set rules on this list, but basically I try to keep it just maybe one game per series or franchise if the different games in the franchise don't play too differently from each other. And so I didn't want to put like this one and Streets of Rage 2 on there. So I just decided to go with one. And when it comes down to it, I really ended up liking this game more. It's just, the expanded moves on it, all the characters that you can get in this, the stages are really cool, the music and all that. It's just an excellent updated version of Streets of Rage, the series of Streets of Rage. But Streets of Rage 2, if this list, if I just did basically just my 100 favorite games of all time and not really worrying about, which game makes it in and all of that, even if there was a bunch of them from the same series, Streets of Rage 2 would be on here, right? And all. But again, I wanted to kind of spread the love a little bit more. But yeah, this game is so much fun, and I'm so glad that they got this game right. Because I think what separates this game from a lot of other beat 'em ups is the strategy involved in it, and also that the collision on the characters, the way it feels, is just it's just done very well. Where some of them, like certain beat 'em ups, sometimes the collision between the characters feels a little loose, like you're not really connecting, like there's no impact when you hit the hit the bad guys and all. Where Streets of Rage, starting from the first one, and especially in part 2, it perfected that out, really well. And this one kind of continues in that tradition. I'm so glad that they got it right, because that was one of my concerns going into this game here. At first, I wasn't quite sure if I was going to like this art style, but it's definitely grown on me. But it's also kind of cool how you can pick some of the pixel characters as well, too. And the other concern that I had was the music, right? Is it going to be able to keep up with the music from the Sega Genesis versions? And it does. I mean, it's an excellent soundtrack. And there's a lot of composers that contributed to it, along with Yuzo Koshiro. And yeah, I mean, it's a banger of a soundtrack. Yeah, but the controls are really well done. You know, the way you have to sort of position your character as you try to make your strike. I mean, it keeps you on your toes. And the AI for a beat 'em up is pretty impressive as compared to, like, again, most other games in the genre. And I think that's kind of what keeps, you know, what makes this game really fun. Boom. And I mean, it's one of there's a few things that I feel like makes a beat 'em up really good. And again, it's everything that I talked about as far as like how your character is able to like get in contact with the other characters, that the collision is there, and that the stages are varied as well too, like whether if it's locales or, you know, set pieces that it puts you in. That you have a wide variety of moves so that you can just kind of mix things up, you know, and just kind of keep things interesting. And the music as well too. You know, you want a good soundtrack. I'm playing this on the Switch. Runs excellent on here. I have it also on the Xbox, and it runs as well there too also. So really, I mean, whichever system of choice you want to get it on, you're going to get a good version. These guys can be kind of annoying. And so then you have like your kind of powered up move right there. But it's a bit of a risk reward. High risk, high reward. Where if you use it, it can take a little bit of life away, but you can do some major damage on it, you know, if you use it correctly too. Oh. A lot of cool little detail in the background too on some of these stages. And a lot of the enemies are like throwbacks right from the original Streets of Rage games. Oh, what's this? I don't know if I've ever noticed this. Oh. This guy can be pretty tough. Oh. I selected this stage because there's one spot that I like what they do with the music. I thought it was really cool. Boom. Now let me throw this bush at you. He's done with. And so now you're like in this fighting arena, you know, and anyway, I just love that when there's a beat 'em up that has a lot of variety like this. It just keeps things fresh. Again, short, concise levels that are very varied. That's, I think, the kind of like the magic formula for a lot of these retro inspired games. Don't overstay your welcome. Because sometimes I feel like if a stage is drawn out too much, even if the play mechanics are good on it and all, it just makes things a bit boring. But like this game gets it. You just fight enemy after enemy. It's like I like how they did Axel too, also, where, you know, he's older, a little bit more grizzly, kind of like whatever, let's go, you know, I'm here to just kick some ass. Just looks like he's been through some shit. Oh, I'm dead. Yeah, the music is pretty badass here. Sounds really cool, like in a good stereo system. Of course, Donovan's back from the Streets of Rage 2 and 3. Let's get some money. Throw your ass against your buddies there. Oh, ouch. Man, they're just non-stop. This game can be very challenging, like if you play it like on normal or hard even. And it has like a like extreme or something like that also. It's crazy. Yeah, this part right here, that was pretty cool. Boop, 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 boop. That's awesome. Oh, I just got goosebumps playing that little section right there. Just how the flames come up and the music and the bass kicks in. Hell yeah. I tell you, man, Sega games just have a way of like getting the blood go or getting your blood pumping. Not technically like a Sega developed game, but it's from a Sega franchise, so I'm gonna call it a Sega game. There's that new Streets of Rage game too that's supposedly coming out, right? That they announced a few years ago, along with like Golden Axe, Crazy Taxi, a new Jack Ryan Radio, and all that. Wonder what's going on with that. We haven't really heard anything, but we do get the Shinobi game that was announced coming out next month, so maybe they're on the verge of announcing them. We got a Nintendo Direct partner showing tomorrow, so maybe they'll say something there too. But yeah, either way, Streets of Rage 4, awesome game, best beat 'em up of all time in my opinion. And if for some reason you haven't played it, you want a fun game just to beat up some bad guys and all that, you're really not going to get anything better than this game. I mean, this is to me a new classic. Great game. Coming in at number 41 is Panzer Dragoon 2 Zwei, or Zwei. I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but this game is another game that is sort of stuck on the Sega Saturn. That is just, I mean, it's an on-rail shooter when it comes down to it. But this series of games, though, that the Sega started, they poured a lot of money and soul into, and it seems like they really wanted the Panzer Dragoon series to become something. I mean, it is something special, but that they really wanted to take off, like, market-wise. And it just never really did, though, unfortunately. And I think it's just because, again, it was stuck on the Saturn, and the style of the game, it is something that is not, I guess, the most universally appealing, but kind of like games like that I just mentioned earlier in this list, for like, let's say, Shadow of the Colossus and Journey. This game just has a certain feel to it and all, where it's very, it's the world that it creates and all, it's very mysterious. It doesn't really spell things out for you because the story is very vague, very ominous almost on what's going on in the world and all. And I mean, ultimately, you're a guy on a dragon, right, finding a bunch of monsters, I guess you can say. But there's just a certain mood that this game evokes that kind of similar to those games there. That part of the fun of the overall experience is that world that it brings you into that is very unique again. And again, Sega poured a lot of money into these games and all. I mean, like the language that they speak, I think I read one time that it's not like a actual language, it's a language that they made up. So again, they were really trying to make this game something. And this is the second game in the series, because there was the original one, Panzer Dragoon, on the Sega Saturn that debuted there, and then this one. And then we got the next one, Panzer Dragoon Saga, which is like an RPG, and then Panzer Dragoon Orta on the Xbox. And then that was really it, outside of a remake of of the original Panzer Dragoon game on modern systems. But it's definitely one of the more unique games that you'll find on the Sega Saturn, and unfortunately, it's just a series that's been lost in time, and it's an on-rail shooter, and also there's nothing too revolutionary, I guess, about the gameplay and all. It's just, again, the world that it takes you into and all that. It's again, one of the great things about video game, right? It's just the escapism about it, and where you travel to in this, in this game here and all. It's just truly something special and magical. And it's not a long game. It's kind of like all the the on rail shooters of the Panzer Dragoon series, because again, one of them was an RPG. They're not long games and all, but they'll definitely take you for like a magical ride, and where it's almost like a roller coaster and all the cool sights and sounds that you're going to see, and you're just left in awe of wonder, right, and all at what you're seeing. And yeah, I mean, this game really was impressive on the Sega Saturn, as you're seeing here. This is probably my favorite level, just because I love the effects that they did here with the with the trees and all, and the to I mean, the the draw distance of the foliage of the trees on top, and then the ground at the bottom, which was probably somehow using the VDP2 chip, I believe, is my understanding of the Saturn. They could do like these infinite planes, but really gave you a sense of like being in this very dense forest, and then you're fighting this weird alien kind of looking creature of some sort, but it looks like it's like part robot also. But again, that's part of the joy of these Panzer Dragoon games, is just how original the concepts were for the world and the enemies you fight, and just the overall lore and everything about it. And they were truly something else. And again, it's one of those games that it's stuck on the system. I tell you, the Sega Saturn is such a great system, and it's I just wish it would get more love as far as not only for, I mean, it does have a cult following now. I mean, I'm glad that people are picking up on that, but I wish a lot of their games would get re-released now, because not a whole lot of them are, unfortunately. And this is, for example, one of them here. But there was supposed to be a like a remaster or remake of it, kind of like they did with the first one, and I was excited for that. And they actually announced that it was going to come out, I think, at the end of 2022 or 2023 or so, that they were going to give us more information, but nothing's come of it. So I don't know what's going on with that. And unfortunately, I think it was just kind of quietly canceled in the background. But yeah, if you can play this game or this series, I highly recommend it. It's just you'll be in for a very thrilling ride with these games here.